Number 7. James Duckett. On May 12, 1987, a local Mascot fisherman found the body of 11-year-old Teresa Maccabee face down in a lake. She was less than a mile away from the convenience store where she was last seen. A medical examiner's report confirmed that Maccabee was sexually assaulted, strangled, and then drowned. James Duckett, a rookie police officer, was the only one on patrol the night of the crime. He had approached Maccabee and a 16-year-old boy, telling them to go home. The boy and his uncle later testified that they saw Maccabee entering Duckett's patrol car. In addition, during the trial, 3 other teenagers came forward, stating that months before the murder, James gave them rides and tried to make sexual advances. He was convicted in May 1988 and was sentenced to death in July by Judge Jerry Locke. Duckett has repeatedly appealed his conviction, but has been denied. Because the case was based largely on circumstantial evidence, it was the subject of much media coverage and legal analysis. Despite the questions raised, detectives and prosecutors who worked on the case have expressed confidence in Duckett's guilt. Duckett remains on death row at the Union Correctional Institute in Rayford, Florida. Number 6. Manuel Manny Pardo Jr. Manuel Pardo Jr. had previously been employed by the Florida Highway Patrol from 1970 to 1979. After being terminated, he joined the Sweetwater Police Department in Miami-Dade County. Pardo was involved in the drug trade and killed his first 2 victims in January 1986 with a .22 caliber pistol during a robbery. He often worked with his partner and co-defendant, Rolando Garcia. For the next 3 months, Pardo had 9 known victims. He was arrested in a New York City hospital when a bullet in his foot matched those found in his final victims. Pardo maintained until his death that his mission was to rid Florida of its drug culture by killing active sellers and buyers of drugs, admitting to at least 6 of the 9 murders. He was charged with 9 counts of first-degree murder for which he received the death penalty. He was executed by lethal injection in Florida on December 11, 2012, after spending 26 years on death row. Number 5. David Stephen Middleton. David Middleton, also known as the Cable Guy, is a kidnapper, rapist, murderer, and suspected serial killer. During his tenure with the Miami-Dade Police, he used his position to kidnap and rape vulnerable women. In 1990, one of his victims, a 16-year-old girl, ignored his threats and reported him to the authorities. He was shortly after detained and charged with rape. The jury was deadlocked on the rape charge. Middleton was instead convicted of false imprisonment and battery, for which he was given a 5-year sentence. He was paroled 2 years later, living first in Colorado and eventually settling in Nevada, where he found work as a cable TV repairman. Middleton is suspected to have murdered Buffy Rice Donahue in Colorado and was sentenced to death by a Washoe District Court for the murders of Thelma Davila and Catherine Powell in Nevada. In addition, he received 4 life terms without parole for their kidnappings. The victims' families, including Buffy Donahue's family, expressed their desire to attend his execution. In 1999, the Donahue family hired a special prosecutor in an effort to charge Middleton with their daughter's murder, but no charges were brought forward. Middleton remains on Nevada's death row and awaits execution. Number 4. Anthony Sully. Anthony Sully was a rapist and serial killer who murdered 6 people in California in 1983. However, Sully's history of violent behavior first came to light during his time with the Millbrae Patrol and post-service. In 1969, his first wife filed for divorce due to physical abuse. His second wife filed for divorce in 1975, again citing physical assault, and an incident where Sully twisted the heads off her daughter's ducklings, threatening to do the same to her child. He was involved in the escort business and drugs, targeting prostitutes and their associates who owed him money or otherwise angered him. Sully tortured and sexually abused his first victim in his hangar in Burlingame before strangling her. Eventually, Sully would bring victims to his hangar for the express purpose of murdering them. He disposed of their bodies in various ways, such as sealing them in metal drums with concrete and dumping them in Golden Gate Park. He was apprehended in August 1983. After his arrest, one of his accomplices, Tina Livingston, came forward. She confessed to her complicity and testified against Sully's other accessories, leading to the additional arrests of Keely Burns and Michael Francis. Sully was convicted of 6 counts of first-degree murder, with special circumstances in June 1986, and was sentenced to death. He is currently on death row at San Quentin State Prison. Number 3. Len Davis. Len Davis was known as RoboCop due to his large frame and the Desire Terrorist because of his aggressive policing style. In 1994, Davis beat a young man in New Orleans, mistaking him for a suspect in a police officer's shooting. Kim Groves, a 32-year-old local and mother of 3 young children, witnessed the assault and filed a complaint with the New Orleans Police Department. Davis was tipped off about the complaint by another officer and then conspired with a local drug dealer, Paul Hardy, to kill Groves. Hardy shot and killed her on October 14, 1994, less than 1 day after she filed the complaint. A third man, Damon Causey, hid the murder weapon, a 9mm pistol. Davis was convicted in 1996 on 2 federal civil rights charges for directing Hardy to murder Groves and for witness tampering. Davis was initially sentenced to death on April 26, 1996. The Fifth Circuit, however, reversed his death sentence when his conviction for witness tampering was thrown out. A subsequent jury also chose the death penalty for Davis, and he was formally sentenced to death again on October 27, 2005. Davis is currently on federal death row and is imprisoned in a United States penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. Number 2. Robert Fratta. Robert Bobby Fratta was a suburban Houston police officer and firefighter who organized the murder-for-hire plot, in which a middleman, Joseph Pristash, hired the shooter, Howard Guidry. The target was his estranged wife and mother of his 3 children, Farah Fratta. In March 1992, she filed for divorce after nearly a decade of marriage. Robert was physically, emotionally, and sexually abusive, inflicting deviant practices on Farah, including the consumption of feces for gratification. Once divorce proceedings were underway and a custody battle ensued, Robert began to search for a hitman. He openly told fellow police officers he wanted Farah dead and even asked others if they knew a black person willing to kill Farah. Robert intended to pay $1,000 and a Jeep for her murder. On November 9, 1994, Farah was shot twice in the head in her home's garage in the Houston suburb of Atascocita. Robert Fratta was first sentenced to death in 1996, but the conviction was overturned. He was retried and resentenced to death in 2009. After nearly 30 years, on January 10, 2023, Robert Fratta, 65, received a lethal injection at the state penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas. His children attended the execution. Number 1. Antoinette Frank. On March 4, 1995, Antoinette Renee Frank committed a violent armed robbery at a Vietnamese restaurant which resulted in the killing of 2 members of the Vietnamese-American family who ran the establishment and fellow New Orleans police officer Ronald A. Williams. She was aided by her probable lover, drug dealer Rogers Lacaze. Frank was a 23-year-old rookie New Orleans police officer when she and Rogers Lacaze terrorized the family-owned Kim Ann restaurant, where Frank had sometimes worked off-duty as a security guard. After the two fled the scene, Frank heard the 911 call on her portable police radio saying an officer was down. She returned to the restaurant, posing as a responding officer intending to shoot any remaining witnesses. Fortunately, arriving officers were able to arrest her before anyone else was killed. On May 22, 2007, she was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Frank currently resides at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel, Louisiana, the only woman on the state's death row.